as soon as possible. Now, what are we talking about here? These are the anti-aircraft systems, the armed drones, other critical defenses to help the Ukrainians fight Russian forces. Now, Ukrainian troops are pushing back and holding territory in some areas. They have regained control of the town of Makariv, near the capital. Ukrainians say they're putting pressure on Russian troops in Bucha, and Ukrainians in Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and Kherson. They're also fighting back. We've also just learned what I told you at the top of the show, that 15,000, up to 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since the invasion began 4 weeks ago. That's according to 2 senior NATO military officials. Let's discuss with retired Army Brigadier General Steve Anderson. General, welcome back. Before we go to the map, I want to ask you about this assessment that we've heard. It's the current assessment, it has been for some time now, that Russians have been stalled in this approach toward the capital and in other areas in the country. But how do you reconcile that with the bombardment, these devastating attacks that we're seeing across the country?
Well, thank you, Victor, for having me, and it shows you what a desperate man will do when he can't impose his will. His military is not doing what it needs to do, and so therefore, I mean, in the first phase in this operation, he attempted to do a blitzkrieg, and as we know, it turned into a sitzkrieg. So then he adopted the next phase, which is essentially what we're in right now, which is the bomb and the submission phase, the siege warfare that's going on, and I submit to you, it's going to fail just like the first phase did. But what's really good news about the delivery of these supplies from the United States in this military aid package is that perhaps it can now support a counteroffensive. We just saw perhaps the victory in Makariv and retaking that city. We've seen also some activity in Kherson, which there's been some counteroffensive that have been very successful. And this is really good news for the Ukrainians, obviously, because they need to negotiate with Vladimir Putin from a position of strength. It's not going to happen until they push him back and they conduct a successful counteroffensive. There are 3 indicators, if you let me continue here, Victor, just a bit, that going well for them, which is the first indicator is that the will of the Ukraine people is very, very good. It continues to be good. They continue to resist. The second is that the Ukrainian logistics system appears to be going well. We thought early on that it would be a race between the logistics systems of the West versus the Russian logistics system. We can see now their logistics is terrible. The roads have been shut down. They've lost 700 trucks. Their rail, they have 14 rail brigades. None of them have been put into action. None of the rail resupply is happening effectively. They don't have any airports that are essentially operating effectively. Whereas the Ukrainians are able to get everything they want to keep their people in food and water. And the third indicator, Ukrainian morale and leadership is very, very strong. And of course, that contrasts sharply with the Russians. Of course, good logistics contributes to good morale. It's hard for a person to fight when they're not appropriately fed, if they're thirsty, cold, and they're out of ammo. And of course, victory hits morale a great deal. But you see the Russians; they lost 5 general officers. They have no non-commissioned officers, so all their decision making is centralized. They're leaving the dead on the street. All of that is indicators that they have really low morale. The American Army would never leave a fallen comrade. So the delivery of these systems, in particular support to an emerging counteroffensive, is hugely important and needs to continue.
So let's talk about the Ukrainians, the Russians, I should say, and what could come next, because we've learned from the UK Ministry of Defense that the Russians potentially are now moving in from Kharkiv, moving troops here in toward the center of the country, and could possibly try to surround troops in the east, the Ukrainian troops. Also, we know that Belarus, they could join this fight as well with their troops. Now, is it your expectation that the troops coming in from Belarus would go toward the capital, as they've been trying for 4 weeks now to try to encircle Kyiv, or, as we've seen the increase in attacks out west, that they would head toward Lviv?
My assessment is that if they're going to be used anywhere, they'd be most effective out in the west. But we're only talking in victory about 20,000 troops here. We're talking about 2 enhanced brigades, maybe 2 reserve brigades. I don't think that they're going to have a big impact. I mean, first of all, they have a pretty poor reputation in the military community. Then the other thing is, command and control. How is this going to work? Are they going to report to the Russians? How are they going to integrate what they're doing with what the Russians are trying to do? In the American Army, we fight as a combined arms team. We integrate air and artillery, mechanized forces and infantry. We conduct maneuver warfare, whereas it looks like the Russians, and I suppose the Belarusians as well, they understand nothing but brute force warfare. And they're going to have the same problems as the Russians in operating in Ukraine because you've got a very resilient enemy that they're fighting in Ukraine, the Ukrainians, who know where they're going. They know every nook and cranny in the terrain. And now you've got people come down from the north. I mean, they can't just pull it up on a MapQuest or Google Maps. I mean, they don't know where they're going, and they're going to run into people that do, and they're going to know how to flank them and how to fight them, how to resist them, and how to kill them.
Yeah, as we've heard from other military experts, that troop levels is not the biggest problem for the Russians right now, as you talked about many of their logistic challenges as well. Brigadier General Steve Anderson, thank you